No mind, no time, no society man's ever built with no spine, no power, no panic, no king, no queen, no dreams, by no means, no clock, no age, no man was ever let out of their pen with no rage, no fire, with no smoke, or no heat, no weed, no plant from no seed, no locks, no doors, no key was ever made that ain't opened something before. There's no song with no music or no words, no decision made, no vision with no blur, no friend, no God, no law, no guns, no bullets, no justice at all, no jails, no cops, and no cell, no life, no choice, no heaven or hell. No guns, no bullets, no justice. No facts, no truth. No system that can't be broken down by the youth. There's no religion with no lies. It's so odd, no offering plate to pass on to no God, no white, no black. No race exists that hasn't been choked by the slack. No vote, no hope, and no lights. They want us with no sight, no brain, and no rights. No friend, no God, no law, no guns, no bullets, no justice at all. No jails, no cops, and no cell. No life, no choice, no heaven or hell. There's no sense in putting trust in your government. There's no sense in putting trust in any government. Don't trust your government. No guns, no bullets, no justice. No guns, no bullets, no justice.
Oh, how's it going there, everybody? Things are going to be a little different show, a little different format today. I'm a bit like a train on a track, and I every once in a while, a couple times a year, holidays being those couple times, the good folks over at RBN actually take some time off. I'll tell you what a commitment it is. Running a radio station is a lot like, basically it's like being on a farm. You know, when you have other things, animals to feed, and, you know, in the winter, you got to go out and chop the ice so that animals can drink. You know, it's, yeah, it's quite a responsibility. You can't just say, hey, you know, pack up your family and your stuff and just go away for a weekend. That you just don't do that. Not when you're a farmer. And oftentimes running a radio station, you know, right now, I think one of the saving graces nowadays is the automation software that's out there allows for people to actually escape for a little while. And that includes the tech people and everyone that keeps things going at RBN. So God bless them. Enjoy the holiday off. But for me, I'm like a train on a track. And once I hardwire something, and this is one of those things that I've pretty much, for these few hours every week without fail, this is what I've committed to. So what the heck? Why break stride? I got my alarm set. My inner clock's all synced up here. So I'm just going to come on, do a live stream, hang out with all of y'all. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hope you all had a good time together, driving each other nuts around the dinner table with your politics. That's usually what happens. But yeah, hope you all had a good time and got to spend some time with your family, right, and loved ones. There is a lot to be thankful out there. There's one thing in me that changed. I remember when I was a young buck, and you know, it's like everything with children. It's a funny age. That's why I say to, man, we got to be careful with how we raise children, because on a good day, things are very confusing. You think about it, it's about the only place where socialism exists, and we actually endorse it as parents. We insist on it. Isn't there a ruling class and then a lower class that gets all the benefits for free, but they're given to them in a form that they're going to like it or not? That's the way it is, right? And it's a form of socialism. And it's the only place you'll find it is within the family unit. and of course, with God. The same type of relationship kind of exists there, that parallel. But yeah, with our young folks, boy, do we need to be so very careful of them. They're on a good day, things are pretty confusing, and when they're growing up, they're getting from that stage where they got everything that they wanted. Santa Claus brought them everything that their little heart could desire, and they were given food, and they were given clothes, and they were given toys, and they were given things. And as you grow up as from a child to a young adult, you get into, where you got to start earning those things for yourself. Right? Having, where do you get that good work ethic as a young man? You got to start developing that somewhere. And it's that in between period where kids they're really pulled in a lot of different directions. So I try to, being the old fart that I am, I try to make sure I ground myself a little bit when you're dealing with the young folks. And, I think back and try to put myself in their shoes and what they're going through. All right. There's like a 3-year-old girl in my life now that's just an adorable, just a little ray of sunshine. And, she's the typical, the two, the terrible twos that they talk about. And there's a kind of rebellious stage when they learn how to say no. But they're so inquisitive, and so much goes on in one day for a child that age. So much growth and so many observations and things are taken in and processed that it's hard for us sometimes as adults to imagine the learning that's going on and how they're learning to be a good, productive, offspring, a partner, a member of society. All those things start and are nurtured at home early on, and kids are very, I just think back to those periods, and we got to be careful, because everything that you say and do is absorbed by them and interpreted in a particular way. They're vulnerable, as you see, by the perverts and pedophiles and freaks that are all over them with this through the gender cult. And it's cult-like. You have to say, call it what it is. It's cult-like. The attraction, the affinity, the absolute relentlessness of their perversions onto your children is unbelievable. And it's obvious. All right. At a time in their life, mind you, where things are pretty chaotic on a good day. All right. When you go back, even before the gender cult really got a death grip on, definitely on the government schools. I'm going to get your kids out of those horrible government schools. Your rights are being taken right away from you as a parent. You will be lucky if there is ever a rub in a dispute with your school district. You will be lucky to prevail at this point. I highly recommend that, while you don't have an ongoing litigation with them, or you haven't had your child taken from you, homeschool. Put in a letter of intent notifying the school district that you're now going to be homeschooling. You're going to be teaching at least the minimum number of hours per week per semester, and the following subjects will be taught. And then you do it the way you need to do it. And you keep your kid away from those things. I'll tell you, they're not spending time on mathematics. They're spending more time on acquiescence, how to make sure that your child behaves. And everyone, I keep thinking of the video, the Pink Floyd video, Another Brick in the Wall. All the kids in gray in their tattered clothes up there marching in unison and right over the edge and into the meat grinder. Remember that? Right, that's what they want. All right, you can't drift off in another direction. You got to stay in the line. All right, and if you're having a hard time coping, We've got a pill for that, says the government and their partners in Big Pharma. We've got a pill for that. So, other than that, happy Thanksgiving. Sorry to be such a Debbie Downer, but, that's the way it is. The schools are dangerous places for your children. All right, we got to understand that, and, just admit it. Just admit it. All right. Well, I didn't ask. How's my audio going this week? Is the audio coming out okay? My audio all right? It's hard to tell. Hopefully things are going all right. It looks to be. So, yeah, we're a little bit off from the usual. We're not going to have our break right at the half-hour point and commercials and all that type of stuff. It's one of the few times where I can just direct you down in my description. I never plug myself. Man, my family, I remember way back when I started doing this, my father saw a couple of the early presentations. I used to tramp around all over the countryside and all over the Northeast talking about land use policy, oddly enough. All right. When you advertise this, funny, you go out and say, a 2-hour conference on UN Agenda 21 and the conspiracy to take your property rights. No one comes, and when someone does, it's someone to do a hatchet job on you in the newspaper. But when you say, regional land use policy discussed at a forum on, and all these people come out, and I start talking in their terms and bring it right back around to its roots and where it came from, and undeniably begin beating them over the head with their own shit. Okay. And it was a wonderful experience. I loved it. And, my father saw some of that early stuff and he said, man, you gotta charge for this. And I said, I do, I usually give me gas money. I get gas money or something like that from it, but I had a hard time charging for, information that was in my head. Isn't that kind of a weird thing, man? I don't know. And I still do it, but I put this stuff out there. I obviously can't point out my own links and whatnot during the show. I got to stay focused on plugging them and their sponsors and whatnot. But I do appreciate Republic Broadcasting and them helping me get the word out. Let's face it, I've made some pretty interesting friends doing this over the years. I'm pretty thankful to hear from. One of them I just heard from recently, and he might be listening. I don't know. He's on the West Coast. He's out in California. And he had an idea when I forget what show it was I was talking about, had to be something to do with HARP and EMF, EMPs and things like that. And he was having horrible problems, circulation in his feet. And he couldn't, the doctors were puzzled. They didn't know what the heck was going on. And he theorized after, exhausting all the other stuff that it was probably coming from electromagnetic radiation right from the dashboard of his truck. He was a truck driver at the time. And he started experimenting, bought a meter and started experimenting with different materials for shielding and whatnot, and found some interesting results. And he called me recently. I made some great friends doing this, and I stay in touch with quite a few of them. And I'm thankful for that. What else? I do have my usual suspect hit list of things to talk about, and hopefully people are paying attention here and not just taking everything straight from the network news. This country really is under attack. I'm serious. It's people, I guess, figured they were going to see the blue UN helmets marching down the street and bombs raining down, and completely lost sight of the fact and the possibility that other elements of war are attacking supply lines, for example. You know, I mean, is there evidence out there of our food supply being tampered with and tainted and in jeopardy? Is there any evidence of that? Energy. Is our energy supply adequate? I mean, is this tell me we don't have a country where there's regions that suffer from rolling brownouts and blackouts? You know, with an archaic grid out there. Right? But all these grand plans, by the way, for their AI server farms. I don't know if they told you, but it's going to take orders of magnitude more energy to run their AI that monitors our every move than what we are all using right now. Okay, so those numbers don't quite add up. But yeah, is there evidence that our energy is being throttled or attacked, or in preparation to be attacked, or are the skids being greased here? I don't know. I'll leave that for you to ponder. I personally think it's very not only possible but likely at this point, because many times they've talked about it. One of the things I got on my list this week, and I've got a little bit of experience in this too, a spooky place. We are going to talk about the National Guards that were shot in D.C. and some of the coincidences that exist there. But since I kind of touched and nibbled on the edges here, there's a federal agency. It's called the National Biological and Agricultural Defense Facility. And it's currently in Kansas, all right in the heart of America. And it's a giant biological facility. It's a biolab, level 4 biolab. And they studied, and it's important to think back and remember where its roots came from. And it came, originally, I think it was 2000 and, in my notes here, I think hopefully I put it in there. No, I believe it's 2009. It was decommissioned from the, what's known as Plum Island. It's kind of smack dab in between New York City and Connecticut. All right, it's out there in the Sound, in the Bay, and you know, just a tiny little island. And they had a research facility there that mostly studied hoof and mouth disease and things like that. And they really watered it down and made it sound, you know, benign, but it wasn't. It wasn't. And my involvement out there was, and some of you mentioned this before. It's not the first time I've talked about this, but for those that are new and tuning in, when I was in college, the professor that I had for some of my classes also owned a laboratory and some other businesses there in the area of the campus. And I wound up working for one of them and doing research for them. And some of the stuff that I did and advances in my little area, I believe, are still being utilized today and built upon. But it was an interesting company that treated waste streams through natural processes, through constructed wetlands with a rubber liner, certain media, certain plants, certain, you know, it was all tuned to whatever you were treating. But we were using natural systems that when you look at it, as you tool by on the highway and look at this horrible slurry that's being treated right before your eyes, it looks like just a little environmental slice of heaven. You know, it's got wild birds and things. It's green. It's, you know, all those great things that you like to see. But, you know, we treated all kinds of stuff. One of the projects that we had, and it was a little difficult. We had a group of grad students, and they're the funniest thing. It's like herding chickens. They'll tell you how many centimeters it is to the moon and back, but you know, they'll cut their toes off with a circular saw if you leave them alone too long. interesting people, to say the least. But, we go up there, and there were several times that I chaperoned trips because I had research greenhouses going, and I knew just what was going on, and was, in fact, probably ahead of the curve on some of these students. So I worked with them quite a bit, and was paid to do so through my work with the company. And one of the projects was to go to Plum Island. And I remember we had a little orientation before we went. And the professor, he's someone who's worked all over. He's worked in South America and Shushu-Findi and dealing, with down there taxis. They're just old dump trucks and pickup trucks and whatever that you can hop onto, and it takes you back and forth in and out of the jungle. And it's not unusual for the cartels to stop you on the way and with a machine gun to your head, ask you what the hell you're doing. So he's been in and out of these types of situations, and was explaining, yes, Plum Island. And it's decommissioned now, supposedly. But, we were supposed to go out there, and he said we the only way out there is to take the ferry. So we'll go out on the ferry. There will likely be other scientists on the ferry as well going out there. And he said, just all of you sit together and just be quiet. All right. Don't talk to the scientists and the doctors or anything none of the people there that you see. And no, it'll be obvious. They'll be wearing their, lab gear and whatnot. And, they'll probably sit together too. But they will probably not talk to you because they're not supposed to. And they didn't. It was very spooky. I mean, just as we mingled, as we were getting ready and loading on to the ferry, they wouldn't make eye contact, and no one said anything to anybody. We took the trip out to the island. We all offloaded. They went their way. No one said good morning to each other or nothing. It was very strange, very eerie. Our chaperone, the guy that came to meet us, and this was all prearranged. We didn't just happen to show up at the ferry. This was something that took months of arrangements between the professor and the staff at the island. And the guy took us on a tour. We did one lap around the island, and showed us where, the limits of the island were. We went to the main building, and he brought us just through the doors. And he turned around and he said, this one room right here, if you absolutely must, is a bathroom. You go through any of these other doors, and there were people right there that were going to check you in, but he said, if you go through any of these other doors, you will be placed under federal arrest, quarantined for a minimum of 3 weeks, and probably charged. So, of course, no one had to go to the bathroom that day, and if we did, it was out in the sand dunes. But that was, just me, an undergrad on a trip to do a project. There was no one from the government or anyone that vetted me, but, little old me, a relative nobody in the giant scheme of things, had access to the inside of that facility. And one of the reasons that they said that they were going to decommission it and move it, and there's a very complex story, and is very deep and dark, and you don't want to ever chase it down. But one of the reasons that they wanted to decommission it was because that it was not secure. Now, they used to hire hunters a couple times a year to come out on that island and literally eradicate every living thing. I mean, every woodchuck, every deer, there's like a 2% chance that a deer could swim out from the mainland and go into the island, and a 0% chance that they could get back because of the current. It would just take them out to sea and they drowned. So even though it was impossible for a deer to make a round trip to the island, they could still swim, they could still get there. So they were eradicated, and everything that was killed was scooped up and put into the incinerators. They had incinerators right there, did immediately cremated any of the biological stuff, animals that were on that island, because of the sensitivity of the viruses and things that they were working on. They couldn't have it get out. You know, call it coincidence if you will, but while they're working on those things over in, Lyme, Connecticut, right, about, I don't know, what is that, 2 miles, I think, away from Plum Island, is where that's where Lyme disease, the first case of Lyme disease. That's why Lyme disease got its name. It was from Lyme, Connecticut. It was where the first case was. So now, is it unreasonable for us to say, hey, well, is it possible that lab was doing this? Huh. So yeah, someone was asking how do they allow us to go there. It was we were there working. It was a contract. It was a contract with the professor through his business, where we were out building constructed wetlands. I've helped treat the effluent from underneath landfills, from juice companies, sewage from municipal sewage plants. Almost potable water came out the other end of some of my research greenhouses. These aren't even full-blown engineered, installed facilities. These are just research greenhouses. And we've treated everything. And so far, the most difficult thing to treat was the leftover waste from a juice company, the actual pulp in the juice in the slurry of apple cores and fruit cores and things like that. Was very tough on the plants. And when I left, we were, oh man, if you planted a half an acre, a quarter of an acre of constructed wetland plants with the Phragmites or the canary reed grass, whatever we were using, you would be lucky if you had a small handful, maybe a dozen plants that survived. And what we were doing is trying to replicate those plants. There was something resistant about those couple of plants that made it through the slurry we put on them, and we were trying to reproduce them as fast as we could. It was, I guess, almost a form of genetic engineering, if you will, only we're not tweaking anything. We didn't do anything in a laboratory. We didn't do it. Yeah, all we did is propagate. It wasn't a cloning process. It was propagation. We propagated as quickly as we could. And that's where we left off at. And of course, there's side research. All plants are very unique in what they do. The duckweed that we used in those projects, we used it, and in the place that we used it in was in the tail end, polishing things off, because it hyperaccumulates phosphorus. I believe up to 30 times more than it needs for cell division. So we were using natural things that we found in the environment, unique plumbing and dosing that we can use from greenhouses and septic systems, on-site septic systems, apply all that together. And we were doing some pretty cool stuff. But that's why we were on Plum Island is, if you go and look at the aerial of it, you'll see it too. As you go straight across from the main building, go up that kind of a dirt road, you can even see the old cells where our wetland areas were, and go straight back where the lagoon is. And I'll never forget walking with the professor and the guide to the end of that road and looking up and over and down into that lagoon. It's stuff that was just coming out of a pipe from the facility and dumped in there. All right, this is an island of sand, and there's nothing dumped in there that didn't just eventually go out into the ocean. And I don't even know. I remember I had to go. I had a commitment of a minimum amount of time to get the all those motivated grad students, so they knew what end was up. And then I told him, I said, I want out of here. I watched the wind blow and the dust, little dust whirlwinds going through. And I think of the site, the crap that I saw inside that lagoon, and what we could potentially, what are we treating? I didn't know. And I didn't think I wanted to be exposed to it. I didn't like working with landfill leachate. That's something I remember. Man, even if you had gloves on or something, but if you got any on you, you could taste metal in your mouth. You could taste the metal almost immediately. It got into your system, some of that crap. I hated it. But yeah, that's what got me on Plum Island, was doing a constructed wetland to treat a waste stream out of that facility. And they decommissioned in 2009 because they weren't capable of the security that was needed for the research that they were being expected to engage in. And that's what this stuff is. All right. The National Biological and Agricultural Defense Facility. Look it up. It's in Kansas. And right now, in fact, one of the things that I think there's 10 different projects that involve mRNA. And there's one now that's hitting the news about ticks. Again, thinking back to Lyme, Connecticut, Lyme disease, Plum Island, which used to be this facility. Prior to 2009, it started out as a military fort, believe it or not. And it was owned by the military, and it evolved quickly into a biolab. And that's how it operated in a big shroud of darkness and black budgets. And, right up to 2009, like I said, and was moved to the heartland or the heart of America in Kansas. It's unbelievable. And now they're working on ticks that will deliver vaccines. And we talked about this and theorized it, because all of these genocidal maniacs have talked about how they can do things to you basically without your permission. I don't know how else. I ain't gonna pussyfoot around it. I mean, we're all adults here, right? They want to, good ideas don't require force. Right? Good ideas don't require force. And if they've got to force you, either just force you, or if they've got to be this covert and this elusive and sneaky, all right, is this vaccine really good? Because if people were dropping of a natural illness or a disease that, I don't know how, I don't care how it got here, we dug something up and it got out and into the human population, hit from an asteroid from outer space. I don't know. Don't care. If there was a vaccine that stopped people from dying and cured people of these things, people, you wouldn't have to beg them. You wouldn't have to force them. You wouldn't have to trick them. So why? Why do they got to even think about putting vaccines to be delivered through a parasite? I don't know. Do you trust them? Is that it? Does this not bother you because, they love you? Government loves you, right? They wouldn't do anything like that. Well, this is not their first rodeo, thinking about this type of thing. Oh, I remember, I got to look this up, re-look it up as I mention it, and I want to be able to put it out there. Again, it was back in my college days, even before I was totally awake. I remember coming across an article where they were talking about biowarfare, and the government had done research on Canadian geese because they have such a large tract that they fly back and forth. Right? And what disease, what could you create biologically? What type of a pathogen or a virus or a bacteria could be created, carried on or in a goose, and infect. I mean, what if you could engineer something that only affected cold areas? All right, Canadian geese, cold areas. What if you created a virus that and you wanted to attack Canada? And when all the geese are down here in the summer months when things are lush and everything, you infect them and send them up. And all of a sudden they fly right in and infect the population. So the government did research this stuff. They knew right up front, especially as they started treatment facilities in your towns and whatnot. Oh, yeah. All the hunters were pointing out how, the geese that were hanging out here in the pond that you were shooting and eating were basting their asses over in the sewage lagoon a few minutes ago. And how they were bringing invasive weeds back and forth, were coming in on their feathers and their feet. And reinfecting and infecting invasive plants were being mapped based on the habits of geese. So they knew this was a possibility. And now they're doing research to see how can they, you want to eat, damn you. We said cows fart and burp too much and they're causing global warming. All right. We told you no more meat. Yeah, you keep wanting meat? Fine. All right, we'll show you. Well, we now got, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, the first person to technically die from a meat allergy that he got, I believe, from a tick. It was another type of tick bite that causes just a horrible allergic reaction when you try to consume red meat. And it killed this guy. So, yeah. Could they? Would they? I think so. The government's done much worse things, and they keep saying, oh, well, we do this because our enemies would think of doing this, so we got to beat them to it and have a cure for that. Well, you know what the cure for that is that if you catch someone somewhere in the world who plans on killing you and possibly others with something like this, we just all got to say that this biological warfare through the use of disease is just a global no-go. Leave a smoldering hole in the ground. Whatever nation if identifies a lab, say, there they are, nuke them. Whatever you got to do, that cannot be tolerated. This is the type of thing where any maniac, should they ever get the knowledge or the ability, or even if they didn't have the educational ability to develop things like that, but they had the violence and the ability to go and steal it from nations that did. You can't have this stuff around. Can't have it around. So, yeah, that's what's being studied out there in this particular facility now, and it is a level 4, so it does have those alleged protections that Plum Island didn't. But do you think it's unrelated? Yeah, I mean, what does your gut tell you? Plum Island, right there where Lyme disease came from, and studying diseases and ticks, and now the new recommissioned facility in Kansas, and they've got lots of grant money flying around, folks. Lots of grant money, and to be, oh man, and we know it's happening. In some places it's already happening. There's a lot of vaccinations that are mandated on livestock. But this type of thing, is they mix it in with all that we've learned through the COVID 1984 hysteria. Remember the self-replicating stuff. This is where they can taint, and it's just nightmares of this. It's horrible to think of the potential for harm that exists here. Is that, these nanoparticles that they're dealing with really act very much like stem cells. Stem cells, like a blank. It's the basics of a cell, and once it comes in contact with something else, another type of cell, it'll take on those traits, and the DNA is shared, and it knows what to, it's for rebuilding damaged organs and things like that. But it's like a blank cell, and this is, I guess, kind of similar to that. But I don't know. What do you do when your food supply is questioned, is tainted? And they got all these nanoparticles in there that form whatever, I don't know, whatever their handlers want it to. In this case, they want it to form a particular vaccine. What if they think, in the future here, not too far away, that yours continue to be unruly, and that the disease that has to be eradicated is you, and it creates a vaccine to kill you. It self-replicates inside of you, turns into whatever they want it to. Right? What if they can use all this technology, the Wi-Fi, the network, the Internet of Things, everything that we know about HARP and how that affects even the sonic weaponry the Department of Defense has in the military, can alter. They can make you sick. They can make you crap your pants. They can make you hallucinate. All kinds of horrible things. They can cook you. But yeah, what if we all of a sudden are at a point where, without even knowing it, subtly, Wi-Fi networks are able to activate and begin the process right inside your body of all these nanoparticles to begin forming something? What? I don't know. They're saying a vaccine. They're trying to develop vaccines that can be spread by ticks. And they'll say, well, this is a tick vaccine. That's the only reason we do that. Yeah, right. Right. And at that point, if you can get a substance to be created inside of a living organism, it's probably not much of a jump to go from one type of organism to another. I mean, do they create it in a tick, knowing that ticks will eventually bite a cow and create something in the cow that causes meat allergies in humans? I hate to think that evil, and that, that's the way the government is. I'm sorry, that's the way they think. What in the hell are they doing? And why are we allowing it? At least when it was on Plum Island, it was an island. Like I said, for, little old me to get on there, and never once did I talk to anyone other than that chaperone that came out and escorted us off the ferry, gave us one lap around the island, showed us where the front desk and the bathroom was. And other than that, we were out in the sand. All right. But nonetheless, how is it that myself and half a boatload of other people got onto such a delicate place? I mean, what if? Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I do hope that the other facility is more secure than that one was, because they had some really bad stuff on that island. That, like I said, they incinerated everything. Everything, every living thing. Hunters killed everything and went right in the incinerator. I think the Montauk Monster, for those of you that like conspiracies. Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure about whether you get that from infected meat. Theoretically, I guess you could, especially if you don't cook it. Lyme is a spirochete. It's a tiny little corkscrew-shaped parasite, and they just get in everywhere. They get in everywhere. The treatments that they've been giving people, and I've known folks with a lot of people with Lyme disease. I can't believe I don't have Lyme disease. I worked outdoors just about my entire life, and I've been bitten by ticks, but I know to get them off quickly. But I've never contracted Lyme disease, but I do know a lot of people that have. And some of them did okay through it. You know, they got the typical bullseye rash at the bite site. Their joints may ache a little bit, but they got right on a round of the medication. But most of those people, as I'm checking back with them now, had got it. They think they got it again, but I say that they never got rid of it. And Lyme activists say that they never got rid of it. They just didn't kill it all off. You've really got to stay on it and take like 3 times the treatment range than what they're doing. You know, because in some people it's very different. I knew another woman who had it. I remember she would send me a text, and it was like it was half English and half random, any characters and weirdness. You know, I sometimes just couldn't even decipher anything out of it. And it was a short circuit upstairs, a neurological thing that was affecting her, and it would happen and it would go away. Sometimes be completely lucid and all was fine, wouldn't know there was a problem in the world, and then all of a sudden, like throwing a switch, it was very weird. But that's what's going on in Kansas. Why is this being tolerated? Where else is it going on? I think you'll find buried all over the place are little areas where legitimate research can take place, and then also really bad stuff can be covered up. Black budgeted research on all kinds of things, because let's face it, universities and tenured professors, you know, they live and die by grant money. They're addicted to it, just like anybody else, any of the other subsidy addicts out there. Universities are no different. All right. So could there be a lab in one of the big universities near you? It can be anywhere, studying all kinds of stuff. You know, what's going on although they say it's more of a defensive thing, and they made sure, because they wanted you to focus on the name, because it has a defense facility on there. Like, we're not attacking people. We're not doing anything that's going to hurt you. We're defending against other people hurting you. That's the imagery they want in their defense facility. They're creating offensive things in their defense facility. It's like the Federal Reserve is not federal, and they have no reserves. It's all imagery in the naming. Oh, good Lord. What else we got? Those damn Democrats. I'm telling you, that there's a party that just hates America. Hate America. They many of them are treasonous and should be actually charged and put in prison. And this guy's no different either. Dan Rayfield, he's Oregon's attorney general. You know, he's out there now, and he's not the only one. We've heard from other mayors and talking suits how they're not going to cooperate, but this numbnut is out there saying, you know, he's going to start arresting ICE agents and people that would protect ICE agents. And he sent a letter that had his name and a few other assistant attorney generals and other lawyers. All right, a couple other lawyers. And you know, my it kind of triggers my gag reflex when I think about lawyers for the most part. There's like 2 in this whole world that I would give the right time of day to. So he and a few lawyers sent this nasty letter on to the White House, letting Trump know that they intend to consider arresting ICE agents and those that would protect ICE agents, meaning if the National Guard shows up to protect ICE agents while they do their job, so they don't get shot or stabbed in the back or set on fire, things like this. But I noticed what was missing from the letter was the important and critical support of the county sheriffs. Yes, the county sheriffs, because I don't believe the attorney general can just step in as an agency is actually doing its job. Now, I'm not a big government guy. I wish there was no such thing as ICE. But for that to be a reality, you would need a government that didn't try to convince you that it has abolished the militia. All right, we want to just be good constitutionalists here. We got to go back and take a look, at the Second Amendment, and what it says is necessary for a free state is not that you have a gun. That's not what's necessary for a free state. It is the militia. So I'm assuming if you are someone who wants a free state, you have always got to be thinking militia-minded here, and that you've got a role in this. All right. And what else does the Constitution say? Who's the supreme law enforcement officer within your county boundaries? That's right, is the county sheriff. A county sheriff can go and arrest a federal agent. If they're shaking down any of the citizens in his jurisdiction, he's the supreme law enforcement officer. If the feds are going to come into a county and do anything, they need to go up and knock on the door of the sheriff. All right, have his blessing and knowledge of these things going on in his own boundaries, in his own jurisdiction. So, yes, I don't think Attorney General Dan Rayfield has the authority to arrest anybody. In fact, if he tries, what should happen is he should be arrested. Title 8, Section 1324 is pretty clear, very short. You should check it out and read it. It's readily available. And it's a crime to do what he's saying he's going to do. If ICE agents are in there and they're on the trail of an illegal alien, especially one who has probably raped a child or is trafficking drugs or whatever, it doesn't even matter, just that they're an illegal alien. If they're in there doing their job, and he is proposing to hinder that, there's a number of laws that he's in jeopardy of being charged with. Right? He's aiding and abetting. He's interfering with law enforcement. Are these people transporting? Right? It's against the law to transport them. So as soon as they take them from a plane to a bus to a train to a whatever, every one of those people is in violation of the transporting clause of 1324. But they're also guilty now of conspiracy because they've conspired. Two or more of them have colluded together to break the law. So we got to start charging these people. The attorney general should be impeached right out of office. If ICE is in there and say, listen, we got a problem, right? It keeps manifesting itself and giving us warning signs like what just happened. The 2 National Guards shot, 1 dead. The other is still barely holding on to life, but one woman's dead. Afghans. My number one thing on the list here is the National Guard shooters are Afghan nationals. You go back and look at the disastrous exit plan under Biden. And the CIA, of course, they're their own thing. They live beyond. That's the deep state. That's a real Soviet deep state, is the CIA. It's got to be torn right down and totally dismantled and reorganized. What they are right now is a threat. And what's going on here, these Afghan nationals, the numbers, it doesn't pass a straight face test. I don't know why there isn't more people in Congress reporting on this and just clanging the bell. But that they knew that was going to be a hot mess. The government and the CIA, because both had plans out there, and the CIA didn't necessarily do everything exactly that the sitting Bidenista regime had, because they still have their long-term plan, like I said. But everyone that they labeled, because the Bidenistas wanted to get all of these Afghan nationals that were over there, that were helping them out. They were guaranteed, there were agreements that they and their families would be able to be refugees into the United States, that we get you into the United States. So you got to tell me, over there at the time during the war, the total number of troops that we had on the ground, all right, 3 times that were those Afghans that the government was calling refugees, that were translators. In other words, the number of people that were trafficked, the number of Afghans that were trafficked into the United States under the Bidenistas with the help of the CIA, there were 3 translators for every troop on the ground. Right now, platoon leadership and things like that, the hierarchy, they may need translators, okay, that are close at hand. But to have 3 translators for every troop, that's not possible. There's not that many translators there. All right, for each company, say there was 2 translators for each company out there. Now, where are all those others? Who are all those others? Who came in during that time? The shooter, the DC shooter. His brother, a CIA platoon leader. Folks, they have been trafficked into this country. Look at the Somalians. Look at how many Somalians in Minnesota. This was all Obama. He had a program to make sure these refugees brought in, they were safe, and they vetted, whatever. So yeah, none of these Afghans that came in during that crisis, of course, never failed to take advantage of a good crisis, right? So they didn't let that go by. Everyone's up in arms and all worried about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and they're saying, "Oh, we're going to redouble our efforts to make sure that the Afghanis and that all of our soldiers and that it was a slaughter." The Taliban came in, and it was horrible. The Taliban just took over and gave them all that armament. Of course, the globalists inside our military-industrial complex knew that we were about to make a move over in Ukraine, so having that stuff there and moving it around, just moving a few chess pieces on the grand chessboard, if you will. So, yeah, right now we've got an unknown number. Like I said, 3 times the number of troops that we had in Afghanistan, and 3 times the number of translators that the Bidenista regime trafficked into the United States. And this guy is just one of them. The Somalis. I'm telling you, folks, we got to stop worrying about someone calling us an Islamophobe or anything like that. A phobia. You see the meme out there all the time, and people asking if you're or calling you Islamophobic. I mean, maybe you are. That's for you to decide, I guess. But a phobia is an irrational fear. All right, like those that have a phobia of high places. All right, and they get 1 step up on a stepladder, 2 steps up on, and they're frozen in fear. They can't do it. That's an unreasonable fear of heights. All right. Do you have an unreasonable fear of Islam? You got to answer that question accurately for yourself. I don't fear them. What I'm not going to do is be told that I can't speak in condemnation of or to be critical of Islam or anything. I'm not going to let you call me. I'm not an Islamophobe because I'm not afraid of them and I'm not afraid to speak up about them. So let's get rid of that right now. I have no fear. Okay, I'm not saying we form a posse and hunt them down, but I am going to say that they're not compatible with our constitutional republic. They cannot, should not, ever be a public servant. They can't. They can't take the oath. All right, they cannot take the oath. And for that reason, and that's a good reason. It's not a racist reason. It's just a good damn reason why we shouldn't have like the Elon Omars of the world and that other skinny little freaking. I think he's the only one that didn't get in there. But it was so close because the system's so corrupted. What a sad state of affairs. Hopefully they get in there in places like Minnesota and really just clean the place right out. Get us back to ground zero. Get us back to that point where, we've gotten rid of those. You might have some communist Americans, people that were actually born here, that espouse for socialism and communism. There may actually be some of those. Unless they violate the law, where we have to let them screech and howl. All right. But we don't have to elect them. Work on integrity in our voting system, because you don't have democracy. Something I've said 1,000 times. Democracy requires two things. And you can figure out whether you have it in your life and what's offered. But the two things that are required for democracy to actually work and serve as a tool for the people in our republic. Now, Dave, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. I know that. Democracy is the tool. It is a major tool of what this republic uses to make decisions on everything. But what is required for democracy is a fully informed public. Right? Have you had access to, and has there been vigorous debate of, all of the issues of the day? Has all the information been given to you? When you turn on this thing, you call the news. Do they slather you in all the facts that they have been able to dig up? Or do they all kind of start chirping in harmony? All right, chorusing. All right, all chorusing the same thing as if it were written on a script. Literally. Is that news? Are you fully informed when you turn off your television and you separate from the programming? Do you feel intellectually fulfilled, like you know all there is to know about the subject, like you could go and vote on or make decisions about whatever the issue is? I don't. What's the best thing to do about climate change? Because climate change is real. The climate does change. Fact. Unavoidable fact. All right. But is it due to us in cows farting? Is it, do we have to like literally kill ourselves today so that we don't suffer tomorrow? The government's telling us, Yeah. So, yeah, are we fully informed? That's one of the things. And the other is integrity in the election. All right. If you're fortunate enough to have had public debate and you've been able to use discernment and get rid of the junk and, keep the good stuff. All right. No censoring, because if censoring is involved, that's why there's a big push for censoring. Government says they love you and want to protect you from people telling fibs. In reality, they're keeping you from hearing all the information. You got to use discernment. Are you listening to a crackpot, or can I verify what I'm hearing? They don't want you to make that decision yourself. They want to make that decision for you. So is there integrity? If you can go to the polls and you've got everything understood, and you know what's best in your heart, you feel confident and you're ready to vote, make a decision. Do you think that's happening? I ask each of you that, to think back and, what have been the reports in and out? How easy has it been to get people in and out of office, whether it's local, state, or federal? Do you trust the elections in your city or town? I know a lot of people say, well, I trust my little old town. They wouldn't do something like that. There could be no problem there. And, it's kind of tricky. There's people there who, probably aren't corrupt and conspiring to actually siphon votes from one to the other. Some do it unknowingly. And it happens more and more as we digitize things. Right back to paper ballots would be awesome. So every election could be 100% audited. Imagine that, having one bill come out of Congress, all right, that mandates that we say we don't care what you do and how you do it. The only thing that we're saying is that your elections in your town, and for local, state, and federal elections, all must be auditable. Whatever you do, every single step of the way, there's going to be a tracking number from beginning to end. Whatever is going to be baked into it, so it can be audited on demand. You would see major ports. Almost all of the Democrats would say, oh, you can't do that. That'll stop people from voting. Why? That doesn't make a lick of sense. You think about it. No one would be afraid to vote if their vote was trackable and verifiable. You can be private still if you don't want people to know who you voted for. That can be achieved also. Anonymity can still be achieved. Behind the scenes, those that are auditors of this election should be able to access the raw data, not even unmask you and who you are, and be able to tell at a glance. But you wouldn't see Congress. Oh, what a shit show that would be. They would hate that. That's why they don't like clean bills. This is not the first time we've had problems with this. Oh, man, what do we got here? Oh, yes, this little shitbag. Republican in Indiana, Senator Mike Boachek. He is refusing to cooperate. He's blocking redistricting in Indiana. And he says it's because, his little feelings were hurt. Because I guess there was a speech that Trump gave, and he used the word retarded. And this Republican senator from Indiana got all butthurt. And actually, he announced his decision by using his Down syndrome daughter. All right? He's so worried that terms like that is going to, is doing harm to people like his daughter. And then he politicizes and uses her for, a political sounding board to deliver his message that he's not going to redistrict because his personal feelings were hurt. That is no rationale for any public servant to say that you hurt my feelings for something completely unrelated. Therefore, I'm not going to do what's right here. The two are unrelated, and shows that, these guys here, here's someone rather than being worried about Thomas Massey, who's probably the most small government constitutionalist in Congress, for crying out loud, Trump's got to stop fixating with him and start worrying about people like this. All right, I mentioned Susan Collins before. What a horrible disappointment she's been. Lindsey Graham. All right, he has got... Lindsey Graham's been humping Trump's leg for I don't know how long now. I don't know how he survives. And Lindsey Graham actually doesn't hump his leg. He just flat out he used to oppose him. He sounded really like a classic Democrat with the things he would say to Trump, but Trump just allows it. You should remember and get rid of him. This guy here, no different. And it's not, as you look even closer here, always follow the money. What does the money say? With this guy, we know he's kind of bottom of the barrel. He's morally questionable. He's using his daughter to deliver political messages for him, who's special needs. But what else might be influencing this SOB? I wonder. His wife, she was getting, I guess, contributions from the person that would be districted out should they redistrict in Indiana. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. All right, let me say that again. Senator Mike Boachek. I think that's how I may have mangled his last name, but he's a Republican senator in Indiana who is blocking redistricting. It is something, you get an opportunity every decade to do this. And up to now, the Democrats have been out there gerrymandering these districts, and it is a big part of why we're in the hot water we're in, is because they're not afraid to really tuck it right to us. Redistrict 100% to their benefit, not to the benefit of the constituents, not to the benefit of the Republican Party apparatus, but strictly to their benefit. And now you've got an opportunity to at least try to level the field a little bit. And you don't. And why? What wouldn't he do it? He didn't state a reason. Well, redistricting now would be a bad idea because it would take attention from this, or it would, be a bad idea because of that. He offered none of that. He said, I'm not doing it because Trump said retard. The Republican Party apparatus of Indiana should get off their hands, do a little house cleaning, primary this piece of crap. These are the type of people you got to get rid of. Lindsey Graham, get rid of them. Susan Collins, get rid of her. Murkowski, get rid of her. McConnell. He's literally carried in and out of the Capitol, almost like a drunken college student. I don't know. Yeah, he's not able to represent, and when he is upright and conscious, he's only kissing the ass of the globalists. Got to get rid of him. So yeah, this guy in Indiana, his wife's getting paid from the person. Should if redistricting happen, the person who is going to lose his seat is giving money to this senator's wife. So whose ass is he kissing? Right? Am I a racist again, an Islamophobe or something, because I point out that I think his wife is getting political dollars and it influenced his decision here? Every conservative, every Republican, rather, was disenfranchised. I have no allegiance to the Republican Party. They've been largely impotent. I think of them as, kind of having constitutional ED. But, this is kind of why. This is why the party needs to step up and primary this guy, because it's not who we are. Absolutely not who we are. And stand for something. All right, when your values change with the election cycle, they're not your values. They really aren't. This is, I don't know. People see right through it. Yeah, you may say that now, but when it's expedient, politically expedient for you, you'll think another way. You'll vote another way. And that leads to a lack of support from the people you're representing. And when you have that support is there, and you see a synergistic relationship between motivated people, constituents, with their leadership, some amazing things can be done. It's like, in the presidency, you have some first ladies, for example, that are motivated and have a vision of their own, and from a woman's perspective, a mothering point of view, influences some of the programs that come out of the White House. So when that happens, great things happen. I can't think back of a time, other than the Ron Paul movement was very impressive. It was something to work for and with a candidate that wanted small government, that gave money back if he could save his district money. And no other member of Congress ever gave money back. He didn't know what to do with poor old Ron Paul. He was quite a treasure. I enjoyed that thinking outside of the box that his supporters had. And I think, what if that energy, was there with our current legislators? Because what happens now, like the Democrats, that they here in Massachusetts especially, have been brutal. They're criminals. And they're radicals too. So they don't get things done the normal way. They work like a mob. They really do. That's the way they act. That's what their way they're structured. And their supporters much the same way. But man, I think about what it could be like if you could work closer with them, if there was not a takeover in process, because we are looking at that. This is really a takeover of this country that's been years in the making. This is the phase we happen to be in of it, and it's delicate. It's both overwhelming and delicate at the same time. But if you recognize it, you can begin to defend yourself against it. Right? Some people just don't recognize when they're under attack. I started out the stream here today saying that. People think there's always going to be blue UN helmets or bombs raining down, and they don't realize that you can be under economic attack, that you can be under energy attack, you can be under philosophical attack. All these are normal things. I got the right here. I keep it right on my desk. The 45 goals of communism. The majority of that, if you go and read that, refresh your memory. I keep that handy and read that a lot. It's alive and well today. If you get by some of the Cold War era stuff and read the rest of that, it's all about destroying your will, destroying the family, so that husband and wife don't trust each other. Hell, if you imply that there's a husband and wife, you're now some kind of a gender criminal. But yeah, to create strife between husband and wife, role reversals, feminism, it's been the worst thing for women. All communist. They're all communist things that in cultural Marxism that were designed to create divide and to weaken the fabric. I know not everyone who listens to me is religious. I'm Christian, never been afraid to admit it. In having that faith and that little bit of humility to know that, your shit don't stink, that, there's always someone greater. There's always someone greater. And being good in life counts. Whether it's being good, in the raising of your family and your children. Again, I said in the beginning of the stream here, what is the quality of what your kids are getting inside of these government schools? What are we going to do? You can homeschool and do that, break that chain. But when you have a tight family, and it's not unlike the family next door. Back in the day when we were settling this country, and we had to rely on each other. None of us was an island that could survive on its own. We really all had to work together to make sure that the crops got in the ground so that we would be able to live through the winter. Right? Back then, you screwed up. You died in the winter. You froze to death. You starved to death. That's the type of thing. If you screwed up, and it took faith in God and faith in your neighbor, knowing that they, like you, we just lost that part of society. Is just been rattled to pieces. The wheels are coming off that cart. There's really no allegiances anymore to anyone. Only temporary allegiances to where free stuff comes from. And when the free stuff is taken away, those in charge of throttling that, they can create unrest at any time they want. And they're flirting with that right now. It's exactly what they're flirting with. Hopefully, we're going to smoke a few more of them out. You're going to see them making noise. The Treasury Secretary making some noises here. He's cutting all the benefits to illegals. And that's exactly the type of stuff that needs to happen, is you get more of what you incentivize. If people flooding into this country illegally over the border get more than an American struggling to pay bills, put food on the table, deal with a sick child or a sick spouse or something, those people suffer and go to bed hungry, go to bed cold. And illegals are just given. They've earned nothing. Their first order of business was to violate our laws. And we accept it. That's the thing that gets me. I don't want to frost my cookies, man. We got to start saying no. The Islam stuff, I've gotten, you go back and listen to some of my older shows, I was a little bit more tolerant and wishy-washy on this, but no longer. I mean, I don't know. What's the constitutional position? I honestly do not think that it's racist in any way or any type of a violation in any way to declare and even enshrine in law the fact that Muslims cannot serve in elected or appointed office, period. And nothing where you are a public servant and have to take an oath. Nothing. You cannot be the dog catcher. They would outlaw dogs. They're doing that in some areas where they're given some authority and get into a position of power. Because they're outlawing dogs. So no, it can't even be dog catcher because they can't adhere to the oath. Say it. And when you have people up in serving right now, first go and check and see, did they even take an oath? We're finding out that as you go into and that's all you got to do is go into your town clerk, pick a name, find someone in your town who's being a real dink, and ask, I want to see their affidavit. I know in my town, the town clerk, every town is different. My clerk was pretty good about this stuff. She said, I'll criticize her about other things, but with respect to this, nobody was allowed to go. If you got elected, even if it was overwhelming landslide victory, elected by the people, you did not go into that meeting, sit down on that side of the table and cast a vote as a member until you've gone in and taken the oath and then signed and had notarized the affidavit of the oath. There's a paper copy of it as well. You got to do it physically, and you got to sign an affidavit of the same. And you would be surprised how many have not. And in that case, you go to the next city council meeting or selectmen's meeting or mayor's meeting, whatever, and you bring that up and you say, you need to remove this person from office here right now until this has been straightened out. And everything that was done by that person, every vote taken by that person, may now be questionable. Go after these people. Because so far, they've had a free ride. And again, this is someone I spent, 17 plus years at one capacity on one board or another over several towns. And they get accustomed to just doing things without any resistance. They get comfortable and sloppy. Don't let that happen. If you've got a surge of illegals in your community, if radical Islam has crept its way onto your boards, you need to go and check this. Because many of them, and many meaning most, will not take that oath and that pledge to the Constitution. And it's a prerequisite of their positions. Oh, I don't know. Don't let them in there, man. That's all I got to say. So how did everyone, do y'all have a good Thanksgiving? I think this year I probably made the best gravy I've ever made. But I think it was probably the second worst turkey I ever made. I just wasn't impressed with it this year. I think it's the worst one I ever did. We were over at a friend's house. And it was dark, of course. It was dark now, around 4 o'clock, obviously. But yeah, we had one of those new roasters there, the outdoor roasters. I had it out in the backyard, plenty away from the deck, and it was dark out. It had an outdoor light, so I could kind of see a little bit. And I got it going, got it up to temperature, good and hot, and I dipped it in there, and it said about so much for so many pounds, and we threw the bag away, so we couldn't remember how much it weighed, so we kind of guessed on that. But the light was horrible, and I kept lifting the thing out and looking at it, and I said, oh, geez, it doesn't even look like it's cooking at all, And I finally, everyone said, I think we just got to pull it out of there and have a good look and maybe, bring it in and take a closer look. And by the time I took it out, and again, outside, it didn't look like it could still cook some more, but I got it inside and put it down and realized it weighed almost nothing, and it was hard as a rock. It was like turkey jerky, great big huge clunky chunk of turkey jerky. That was definitely the worst. I don't know. So Fletcher and I had a good meal, and yeah, I'm thinking about a few things here to be thankful for in life. You never step back. I'll tell you, there's nothing worse. This is all heavy stuff on your mind, the things I see people talking about and fretting over. And it is. It really is, heavy on your heart and heavy on your mind. But you got to keep your head right and remember to be thankful. Starting from the beginning of the podcast, I had mentioned, when I was younger and I get in a pinch and, I just wasn't where I wanted to be in life. Some turmoil had hit me, and I pray to God. I try to tune right in and get God to listen to me, and just as soon as I connected and tell God what I needed, what I had to have, oh Lord, if you can just help me out of this. And I now, I still have all those problems, I'd still love to have the Lord's help and blessings in these things, but I always start and I connect and I lead with something I'm thankful for, because for as bad as things are, they can always be worse. And and it helps. It does help ground me too. Keeps me grounded. You know, I realize that there are people got a lot worse problems than I do, and that if I'm just persistent, everything will be fine. So thank you for what I've got. That's been my attitude, and it helps. It brings me around. Remember the things that are important. Like my dog Fletcher. What a little treasure he is. Yeah, he's a good boy. And how old is he? He's going on 12 years old. You know, I got him when he was just exactly 10 weeks. And what an awesome farm animal he was. He just loves the birds of any kind. He was able to herd and help out with no training really to speak of. Once he knew where our property line was, letting him out with the animals was natural. He knew where their shelter was and how to get them close to that. During the day, he kept them from wandering out into the woods where the coyotes were. He was just perfect. He got along with the turkeys. He got along with the chickens. It was a very impressive animal. So, all right, here's what we got to do. We got to have our heads on a swivel. I promised I was going to mention this before wrapping things up, and I totally hope that you try not to let your heart be too heavy, but at the same time, don't go through this holiday season thinking that life around you is okay. All right. There's some really messed up folks out there, and I predict, I hope I'm wrong. Totally hope I'm wrong. But I predict you're going to see more assaults, and they're kind of happening. And I think the media is downplaying it a little bit, but we're seeing like the attack that it was about a week ago, was a tree lighting ceremony. I do think that Christians specifically are going to be targeted. You might even see some Jewish places being hit too, but you got to be careful. They sometimes, and they've been caught red-handed, attacking themselves and say, "Oh, look what they did to the poor Jews." So we got to take everything with a grain of salt. But we're already seeing some of the evidence that Christian gatherings, parades, tree lighting, caroling, services. Man, just have your head on a swivel and be careful out there. All right. And if you're just a regular person, going through life, you have your head on a swivel too. Don't let things like this happen to other people in our society. That is most frustrating thing, I think, for me, is to see some of these horrible videos on social media of people being senselessly, brutally harmed. And no one does anything. Someone obviously is there with a phone filming it. But yeah, they just allow it. Look at the guy that, stabbed that girl in the neck on the bus. Another one set on fire. People just stand there. I've been in a couple of positions in my life where I kind of had to risk my own safety to help someone else out. 3 times to be exact. One of them, I was, how old was I? I was in my early to mid 20s, maybe. And there was a guy who really thought he was something. He's, I'm born with a chainsaw in my hand, and I can do this and I can do that, and always quick to tell me all the ways of greatness that he was. And I'll never forget, I was down cutting up a tree I had just dropped on the other side of the power line. and he was in a skidder at the time. We were working on a crew that had a skidder, full-size skidder, with a 70-foot bucket on it, and I could still hear him scream with my chainsaw running. And I turn around and look, and this skidder is starting to roll down the hill. And I had told him, but of course he's way too smart and too good to be listening to little old me. But I told him he should go down the hills with the blade down always, because, you know, sometimes it just works loose and it'll start rolling on you. Oh, no, no, no. So he didn't. He backed down, and he found out because it started to roll while his bucket was way up in the tree. And I said, he's going to get killed or pinched right in half here if I don't do something. And I ran up to, I'll never forget it. I can still see it. These wheels, mind you, on a skidder. The tops of the tires are probably just a little bit over my head. And in between those two tires, there's a little bit of a gap. And then a set of 3 steel stairs that lead up to the cabin. And you got to picture me. I'm running alongside of this through the brush. Right? There's all the brush and the bramble. And the thing wasn't going fast. It was rolling slow, but it was a huge machine with tires taller than me that I had to jump in between and hope I didn't miss that handle or the stair. And I think that God stopped that thing. It rolled up against the stone wall and stopped. At the moment I was about to make a lunge for the step. And like, there's 2 other times where I was similar. So I know that, you know, in a moment like that where someone is in danger of losing their life, that I'm not going to freeze up. I often wonder, what would you do? What would you do? Another one, a guy was upside down in his vehicle out at the edge of the road. It was on fire, tires blowing up. He was upside down, unconscious, seat belted in there. And 3 other people that saw it would not get close enough to within 20 feet because they thought the whole thing was going to blow up. And it could have, because it was upside down, leaking gas, and the tires were already exploding. But, you know, again, I was able to push that aside, and I don't know if it's good or bad. I had kids at this time. What if something happened to me, you know? But the one thing was, I didn't freeze and I didn't ignore it. And I see in life now, it's maybe I don't know, maybe that's why I'm so disgusted when I see it, is the people that sit by and allow evil to do evil. I'm serious. We cannot sit by and let this happen. When a group of young men come down the street, and like the what was it there? The spitter, they called him. This guy, he was a black guy, and I think it was in New York City or somewhere. He was going out and spitting on white women, targeting white women, and it was starting to get out. People were talking about it, and he got busted. And of course, the liberal courts, just like they do with pedophiles, they just let him go. So they did the same thing with this guy, you know. So what? What'd you do? I spit on a bunch of white girls. All right, well, you know, okay, well, go. You're no bail. They let him go, and he went back out on the street, and he got a little greeting from several black guys that beat the living crap out of him. So you can't keep doing that. So that, you know, it looks bad for all of us, for everybody. You know, because you got to talk to people in language they understand sometimes, I guess. You know, I don't promote violence and never have, but, you know, I don't suggest that you sit there. We're not designed, and we were never supposed to just sit there and be assaulted. You know, God does say turn the other cheek, but, you know, people read more into that and distort the meaning of that too much. We're not supposed to just sit there and allow evil to do what evil will do. We are supposed to fight evil always. We're not supposed to be lukewarm on it. I think God would rather have you commit and say, I'm on the other side, than to pretend and fool people and say, oh yeah, it'd be hot or cold, one or the other. I don't know. We can't sit by any longer. Apathy has not served us. Has not served us. Look anywhere around you and apply it to anything. Has our schools gotten better? Has home ownership gotten better? Has education gotten better? By what standards? How do we measure the success or failure of our apathy? And I think the more we've leave a vacancy, and there's no political voids that last for long, something or someone will fill it. And government will always stuff those voids and vacancies full of more government. Yeah. Hasn't worked out well. So expect more trouble. They're going to have to get rid of all the Afghans that were brought in here, unvetted. And they brought them in because the government, the official story here, they were quickly labeled as translators. And there are 3 times as many Afghans claiming to be translators who have were trafficked into this country than there are individual soldiers that were deployed in Afghanistan. For every soldier there, 3 translators, and I'm doing my bunny ears here, were shipped back to the United States. I say most of them were terrorists. These little terrorist cells. The Somalis, same thing, all packaged up, shipped right in, thanks to Obama. Ilhan Omar, she married her brother. What are we talking about here? It's got to be one of 2 things: incest or immigration fraud. It's one of 2 things. I don't know. Get them out. And the old, what the hell's the name of that act? McLaren Walters Act, I think it is. We got to reinstate that so that Muslims, and this is where I think the Constitution falls on this, is that they technically can't hold office. That's just the constitutional fact of that matter. So we got to reiterate that for all to hear. If you're a Muslim and you've declared that you're Muslim, you can't be selectman, you can't be on your board of health, you can't be dog catcher, you can't do anything that requires an oath. All right? But can we, as America, constitutionally, can an individual, even one who says they are Muslim, come to the United States and actually live here, study here? I don't know. Maybe we're still a nation of laws. The Constitution applies. If we assert ourselves, we're basically saying, yeah, you can come here if you want, but if you think you're going to bury your wife up to her waist out in the yard and throw stones at her, you're not going to do that. If you think you're going to go and kill your daughter because she's embarrassed you, it's an honor killing and it's okay. No. All of those things that are violations of individual rights, as described in part in our Constitution, those are the limitations in government. That our rights and the things that the freedoms and liberties we have are seemingly endless. And if you think you're going to call your way of life, your law system, your Sharia law applies, and it's okay to stone your wife or to kill your daughter or son, you're going to find out differently. As long as we enforce our Constitution, refuse to acquiesce on any of it. No, you come here, your wife has rights, your son and daughter have rights. I don't know. I think it might be possible for an individual to actually live here, but they would be the type of Muslim that is not really, it does not believe in their faith or stands down. Their faith stands down to the Constitution. They'd have to do that, period. And I'm not racist for saying that. I'm just trying to reason through this in a way that the political whores and prostitutes won't. It's I'm hard on this now, is that they can't hold office ever because they can't technically fulfill the requirement of oath. All right, fine. They can never be a public servant. I'm good with that. Can they live here? And hold jobs, and they'd have to be, like I said, putting the segments in conflicting segments of their belief system and just putting a cork in it. I mean, that means they can't come in. It's your right to own a dog. They can't come in and because they have, 3 out of 5 members of their select board are from Somalia, and tell everyone in town that, because remember, when you take a license for something, you turn a right into a revocable privilege. All right. Well, let's say that you got 3 out of 5 Somalis running your town hall, and they say no more dogs are allowed. We're revoking all your dog licenses. They don't like dogs, period. All right. Subway, they were pressuring Subway. We don't want you selling or even having near other food any bacon or ham products. Trying to tell the Subway grinders how to run their business. And we see this in these neighborhoods that are dominated by Muslims as they go into store owners. And they shake them right down, do a beat down on them, said, you're not going to sell alcohol. All right, no alcohol here. Pet food and things like that. If dogs are illegal, we don't want you selling dog food. We don't want you selling alcohol. I don't drink. I haven't had a drink in 30 years. I'm not a big drinker. But I don't think that anyone should go and outlaw every package store out there just because they don't drink. But that's the type of lifestyle. Let's go peek into these. It's like Iraq and Iran. Look at them back in the 60s and 70s. And then look at them as a fundamentalist Islam, and creeps in, and where they used to wear bathing suits and outdoor activities normal. You could see their faces, and now all you see just a bunch of black sheets everywhere. I don't know. But here in America, we do things different. It's not a racist thing to say that you technically cannot serve. And I think the Constitution would allow them to live here individually. But if they're ever caught violating someone's right, they're arrested. They can't say, well, we're Muslims. We can do that. Sharia law says we can. Tough. When you get out of jail, take your family, everyone who believes that way, and you go to a nation where you can stone your wife or your daughter or your son to death. You go, because you're not doing it here. I don't know. We're set up for it. The cells are there. The Afghans, obviously, they're paying attention. There's a lot of radicals, the young radicals that are actually domestic. Right, the creations of the government schools, blue-haired freaks out there, who, like the groups there, what is it, Gays for Islam or something like that. Maybe even said that up here in the Northampton area in Massachusetts. Oh, yes, they're all about diversity and the gay lifestyle. And they also have called themselves a sanctuary community, so they're violating the law in that respect. And they are among those nitwits that, they start, the gays for Islam type stuff. Their heads are going to roll first. Right? They, in their countries, once they've taken over and they've taken control, they've used the country's hate speech laws and grants and things like that to slowly gain strength in numbers and eventually gain power. And then they throw you off the tops of buildings. That's what's going to happen. The heads are going to roll in Northampton. The very people that ushered them in and tolerated their incivilities, those very supporters are going to be the ones who get thrown off the tops of buildings. I don't know. Oh, all right, that's it. That's all I got this week. I just wanted to keep my schedule going here. So expect more trouble. There's going to be a bumpy winter, folks. I promise you. It's going to be a winter to remember, I think, because the Antifa types and the radicals, they come unglued. When they see Christians having a good time, they come unglued. It's something that they cannot. I'm telling you, folks, you're going to see some violence out there and bad things happen to good people. And I hope and pray it's not you guys. All right. But I think it's going to happen. We're seeing it ramp up now already. I think if it's reported on anymore, that you're going to see the copycatters because they're ready. They're unglued. The progressives are radically unglued and filled with stress, and they're going to pop. They're going to start popping like little domestic terrorist bubbles all over the place. And as the mobs of illegals know that they're on the verge of being deported, you're going to see additional problems. It's like right now, you can't you can't let women, especially women, cannot be out in public walking around in the streets in areas where these gangs of the Islamic fundamentalists are. They absolutely do not believe that you should be out there and that you should even see your face. And they're getting brutalized. So please just be safe. Please be safe. I'm not saying cower. Christians, you do what you do. Christmas holidays, man, to celebrate and be with loved ones. But as you go out in the world, don't think for 1 minute. There are people out there right now that hate us. Right? And I think it's okay for those that aren't staunch believers to push back against this type of thing. Right? We got to protect one another. And for those that aren't inherently evil, that don't have evil in their heart and wish to spread that evil around, we got to, in terms of tolerance, we got to allow people to be, be individuals, to lead their individual lives, to have that, thing that makes them different from everybody else. We got to allow for that. But the standards, we got to have standards, moral standards that are not exceeded. And this is where government is demanded total tolerance until they're total tyranny. Because that's what comes, once you learn to accept and be tolerant of all kinds of things, tyrannies great and small. Eventually, the type of government you wind up with is authoritarian. Like socialism and communism, the evolution, the fruit of all that is authoritarianism. Socialism is just a transitional form of government. It's not the end point. Don't think, oh, well, we just need socialism, and socialism will be great. We'll do it right this time. Socialism is not an end point. You don't go, oh, hey, Bernie Sanders for president now. We've got socialism. Socialism's here. Check. And you check off the socialism box. No, socialism is temporary. That's that place in between a free society and a totalitarian communist regime. Right? Socialism, it's right in the middle. So, anyways, stay safe out there. Look out for those attorney generals like that nitwit Dan Rayfield out there wants to arrest ICE. You should go down. That's what you should do. Should all flood the phones of the county sheriff in this senator's district and ask that the sheriff go down and arrest Dan Rayfield. All right? That's what we should do. Make sure that the answering machines of everybody there, and this is in Oregon, the attorney general, everyone on the food chain should be asking for this guy's impeachment. Him and his handful of lawyer friends. They're the only ones who put their names on that letter. I didn't see one county sheriff on there. All right. Indiana Senator Mike Boachek sends his Down syndrome daughter out to deliver his political messaging for him, while his wife receives grant money and donations from the guy who is going to lose his seat if they redistrict. What a little scumbag he is, huh? Isn't that pathetic? And the Treasurer Secretary thinking about getting rid of entitlements for all illegal aliens. Good. All right, you get more of what you incentivize. So let's stop telling illegals around the world that if you invade us, we will actually pay you. All right? Stop doing that, America. We'll see if government can do it or not. I don't know. Yeah, and Trump, he's got to stop focusing on Thomas Massey. He's probably the best thing to happen to Congress in a long time. He's got bigger fish to fry. He really does look like a fool when he goes after people like that. He's going to stop kissing Israel's ass, because that's not going well either, because they're using him. They're using him. We got to look at the foreign policy realities that exist out here right now. And the dynamics in Israel is that Netanyahu would have been gone a long time ago. He's fanning the flames and doing some weird stuff. Don't even want to go into all that right now, especially, after I already ran for 2 hours. We could spend another 2 hours on that. But it has become evident, Trump is losing favor. MAGA is becoming unstable based on a couple of things. And the two primary things is his getting on bent knee and fulfilling Israel's foreign policy whims and wants. That's not sitting good with many conservatives. And allowing his cabinet to cover up and hide away the Epstein files. Right? And Bongino, Kash Patel, Bondi, they're covering up. They're not much better. Their FBI is not much better than the old FBI. A lot of house cleaning to do. All right. Anyways, looks like got another 2 hours in the can here. I do hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving and had some time to spend with your family and just enjoy each other. I think that's important. We all need to take that time. All right. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And stress kills. It really does. Stress. If you have chronic stress and you can never, ever separate from it, man, I can feel it. I can definitely feel it in my head, in my body. My shoulders are tensed up and muscles are clenched, and you just how dog tired you can be and still not be able to sleep. Stress kills. And we got to be able to separate from that. Go for a long walk. All right, hang out with a little kid. As I said, I got a little 3-year-old girl. She's just a little sparkle light, a real pistol, this kid. But I can feel the stress just flow away when I stop and just play with her for a little while. It really is relaxing, and I think we all need to do that a little bit. Life is a challenge. All right, love and appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back to our regular 2-hour show with Republic Broadcasting Network next week. Might have another special broadcast though coming up around at the beginning of the year with Christmas and New Year's. So stay up to date on that. Get subscribed, and if something changes and as we solidify our schedules there, we'll definitely let you know. So have a good rest of your weekend. Love and appreciate y'all. Fly your flags high. Keep powder dry. Love each other out there. We'll see you next week.